For what? To take a Rambam, a Chumash. It's a great opportunity to give Musar to the family. It's a captive audience. All right, Shabbos, say good morning. Let's begin. Today's daf is Ayin Tes. 79. We are picking up at the Mishnah. Ayin Ches Amud Beis 78b. A couple of lines up from the bottom. 3, 6. Is there a sponsor? Okay. And we have a special sponsorship today by Simon Sigurd Haken in honor of the engagement of Shayna Lerner to Gabi Srego. Mazel Tov to Lerner Mishpacha, and in honor of the engagement of our daughter Shani to Yosef Bizwadi. We thank the Hakens for dedicating the shir, and halavai we should be zoch and from all of us to see beautiful simchas from our children. I do say that we also, of course, dedicate our learning Le'ilui Nishmas, those who were tragically murdered yesterday in the shooting in Pittsburgh. It's overwhelming to think about such tragedies occurring just within a short distance from us. Anywhere tragedy occurs to Am Yisrael, we feel it. It doesn't make a difference if it's around the corner, if it's in Eretz Yisrael, or if it's in Pittsburgh. It's overwhelming for us, and it's overwhelming to think that in this incredible country we live with so much freedom, we live with so much democracy, and we live with so many beautiful rights and privileges that such a barbaric hatred could rear its ugly head. We dedicate our learning Le'ili Nishmas, those 11 Neshamas, including a police officer who was killed so unnecessarily, and I'm sure there are others who were injured. We dedicate our learning and most of all, we dedicate our learning. We're learning Menachos, learning about the Beis HaMikdash. Like I always say when we learn about these sugyas, whether you retain the information or not, well, try to retain the information. But even if you don't retain the information, at least we get to dwell a little bit in the Beis HaMikdash. We get to dwell a little bit away sometimes from the difficulties and the vicissitudes of day-to-day life and the hatred that consumes so much of our world. Halavai we should be zochem Meretz Hashem. In the source of learning about the Beis HaMikdash, Kadosh Baruch Hu should give us our Beis HaMikdash. The Mashiach should come. And in Meretz Hashem, an incredible sense of shalom, ava, achva, and reus should descend upon all mankind. So let's begin. The Mishnah. Shachta chutz lizmano, v'chutz limkoma. So we'll say, the Mishnah begins an interesting case. We're dealing now with what goes wrong when you go ahead and you shecht the carbon toda. So if a person shechts the carbon toda outside of its prescribed time, which goes says, remember again, this is a psul in machshava. This is that a person is shechting it with the intention to consume it outside of its prescribed time, chutz limkoma, or to go ahead and consume it outside of its appropriate area. So kiddush halechem. Ultimately, again, the halacha is that the loaves, even though the carbon itself is invalid, the loaves still become consecrated. Shachtav and imtzeis treifa. However, again, if you shech the carbon toda and it turns out that the animal is a treifa, so again, remember, a treifa, very simply, again, we'll spend much time on this in our next Masechta when we get to Maseches Chulin, but a treifa essentially is an animal that has any type of condition from which it will die imminently. The definition of imminently is a discussion in the Gemara. We don't have to get into it. The animal, you find it to be a treifa. What's the halacha? Lo kiddush halechem. Ultimately, again, the loaves are not consecrated. Shachtav and says balas mum. What happens if you shecht the animal and it turns out that the animal is a balas mum? The type would appear, we'll define what balas mum means, but it has a mum. What's talacha? Rabbi Eliezer Omer Kiddush. Rabbi Eliezer says that the loaves are still kadosh. In other words, the carbon might be disqualified, but the loaves are still kadosh. The chum say lo kiddush. Ultimately, again, if the animal is a balas mum, the loaves are not kadosh. Shachta shelo lishma. We'll say, what happens if you shecht a carbon toda, not for the sake of toda, you shecht it for shelo lishma, v'chein el hamiluim. We'll say, so too again. Now, we're going to discuss why exactly we're bringing this up, but the el hamiluim the Elamiluim, we're about to say the carbon that was offered during the inauguration of the Beis HaMikdash. V'chein shnei kivsei atzeres. Similarly, again, the two kivasim, the two lambs that are offered up by Shavuos. Sheshachtan shalol l'shman. If you shechted any of these animals, shalol l'shman, any of these shalol l'shman, what's the halacha? Lo kidesh halechem. You do not consecrate the loaves. Good. Says the Gemara. Masnisin money. Who's the pain does our Mishnah reflect? Rabbi Meir. What does Rabbi Meir say? Zehaklal. We'll say, so Rabbi Meir gives us a principle. What's the principle? Kol shepisulo kodem shchita lo kidesh lechem. Well, it's actually a very intuitive principle. Any time that the carbon is invalidated because of a psul which pre-existed the shchita, lo kidesh halechem. Ultimately, the loaves do not become consecrated. Pisulo achar shchita, but if the psul arises after the shchita, then kidesh halechem. Then ultimately, again, the loaves become consecrated. So we'll say, so the simplest demonstration of this is, you shecht the animal, you shecht the carbon toda, and it turns out that what? It was a treifa. They both say, now, when did that was a pre-existing condition. So because it was a pre-existing condition, essentially, the carbon itself was never valid. Because the carbon itself was never valid, therefore what? The loaves never become consecrated as well. Masha'in kain, if the carbon itself was valid, but something comes up after the fact, in Rabbi Meir's verbiage, the psul comes about after the shchita, even though the carbon is invalid, the loaves themselves will be consecrated. Now, what you do with consecrated loaves when you have no carbon to offer them with, we'll discuss that. Shachta chutz lizmana v'chutz limkoma, kidesh halechem. If I will say you go ahead and you shech the carbon, you have in mind to eat it outside of the prescribed time or outside of the prescribed place, kidesh halechem. Ultimately what? The lechem itself, the loaves, are kadosh. Shachta. Now we'll say, now again, the logic over there is the carbonos themselves are absolutely fine. Meaning the carbon itself is fine. There is a disqualifying mindset. Shachta v'nimtzeis treifa. If you shecht the carbon, but it turns out that the animal is a treifa, lo kidesh halechem. Ultimately, again, the loaves do not become consecrated. Top of ayin tes. Top line. Shachta v'nimtzeis balas mum. So we'll say, here's going to be the machlokes case. What happens if you shecht the carbon and it turns out that what? That the carbon is a bal mum. Now again, we're going to define in the Gemara what type of mum we're describing over here. But you go ahead and you find it to be a bal mum. So it's machlokes. Rabbi Eliezer Omer Kiddush. Rabbi Eliezer says the loaves are consecrated. Rabbi Yoshua Omer Lo Kiddush. And Rabbi Yoshua says the loaves are not consecrated. Divrei Rabbi Meir. So we'll say this is Rabbi Meir's version of the Mishnah. And therefore, again, which aligns with our version. That's why the Gemara says our Mishnah reflects the view of Rabbi Meir. So we'll say, so again, everything just quoted aligns perfectly with the Mishnah. And the case of Bal Mum in Rabbi Meir's version is a machlokes between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua. Am Rabbi Yehuda, lo nechluku Rabbi Eliezer Yoshua, al sheshachta v'nimtzeis treifa shelo kiddush. So let's listen to this. So Rabbi Yehuda says like this. Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua do not argue al sheshachta v'nimtzeis treifa, that if the animal, if the carbon toda was shechted, and it turns out that it's a treifa, shelo kiddush. So we'll say everybody agrees that halacha l'maisa, if you shech the toda, let's go with what we agree with, that if you shech the toda, and it turns out that what? That the animal is a treifa, that what's the halacha? Shelo kiddush, that the carbon itself is not consecrated. Everyone agrees with that. Because we'll say, why? Why does everybody agree with that? Because that's a pre-existing condition. In other words, mitchila, that animal was never going to be good. That toda was never going to be good. Therefore, halacha l'maisa, it's clear that what? That the loaves are not consecrated. So that's part one they agree. What else do they agree with? V'chutz lizmano shekidesh. We'll say they also agree that if the animal was shechted with the erroneous mindset to be offered up chutz lizmano, outside of the prescribed time, that the loaves are consecrated. Why, Rabbi say? Why? Because remember, the carbon itself is quote-unquote fit. In other words, there's no inherent disqualification in the carbon. There is an imposed disqualification of the carbon. So when there's no inherent disqualification, it would appear that even though the carbon is invalid, the loaves become consecrated. Va'al balmum shelo kiddush. Rabbi say this is Rabbi Yehuda's model. In Rabbi Yehuda's model, they also both agree that in a balmum, the loaves do not become consecrated. Rabbi say, now why? What's Rabbi Yehuda's logic? Because Rabbi Yehuda's world, so Baal Mum is no different than what? No different than what? no different than shreifa. It's the same thing. There is an inherent disqualification in the animal, and if there's an inherent disqualification, of course, the loaves do not become consecrated, right? The loaves do not become kodesh. I saw a man nechlaku. So Rabbi Yehuda's model. So ultimately, again, wherein lies the machlokes? Al chutz limkomo. Rabbi said they disagree with the case of chutz limkomo, where the animal is shechted with the intention to go and eat it outside of its prescribed area. Rabbi Eliezer Omer Kidesh. Rabbi Eliezer says ultimately that's what the animal is kadosh, or I should say the loaves are kadosh. Rabbi Yoshua Omer Lo Kidesh. Rabbi Yoshua will say the loaves are not kadosh. So Rabbi Eliezer, I don't understand. Omer Rabbi Eliezer. So we'll say, so here what's interesting, in Rabbi Meir's model, the machlokes Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua is in which case? Is in the case of Balmum. Rabbi Eliezer holds the loaves, Rabbi Eliezer holds the loaves become kadosh, Rabbi Yoshua holds the loaves do not become kadosh. In Rabbi Yehuda's model, interestingly enough, the machlokes is in which case? Chutz limkomo, where you go ahead and you shecht the animal with the intention to eat it outside of its prescribed area. Rabbi Eliezer holds in that case the loaves become kadosh. Rabbi Yoshua says they do not become kadosh. Now we analyze the machlokes. Rabbi Eliezer, hoil v'chutz lizmano pasol, v'chutz limkamo pasol. Just like Rabbi Eliezer will say like this. Just like if you shecht the animal chutz lizmano, with the intention to eat it outside of its prescribed time, the carbon is pasol, and so too chutz limkomo is pasol. Ma chutz lizmano kidesh. Af chutz limkomo kidesh. Just like if you went ahead and you shechted it, chutz lizmano, as much as the carbon is pasol, but the loaves become kadosh, so too if you shechted chutz lizmano, the carbon is pasol, but the loaves become kadosh. Rabbi Yoshua, no. Hoil v'chutz limkomo pasol, u'balmum pasol. We'll say just like chutz limkomo, the carbon is pasol, and balmum, the carbon is pasol. Ma balmum lo kiddush, just like by balmum, the loaves do not become consecrated. Af chutz limkomo lo kiddush, so to chutz limkomo also they do not become kosher. We'll see here what the machlokes is. The machlokes is, what do you compare chutz limkomo to? Do you compare chutz limkomo to chutz lizmano? And just like chutz lizmano, the carbon is pasal loaves are kaddish, so to chutz limkomo, the carbon is pasal loaves are kaddish? Or do you compare chutz limkomo to balmum and say just like balmum, pasal loaves are not mekudesh, so to chutz limkomo, carbon is pasal and loaves are not mekudesh? Now, why you would choose to make that comparison, we're going to see. So the Gemara says, Amar lo Rabbi Eliezer, ani demisiu l'chutz lizmano, va'ata demisiu l'chutz lebalmum. So Rabbi Eliezer says, Rabbi Yeshua, I don't understand. We'll say in general, chutz limkomo and chutz lizmano are usually grouped together. So Rabbi Eliezer will say, my comparison makes sense. I'm comparing chutz limkomo to chutz lizmano, because ultimately those two usually go together. Where do you get this idea of comparing chutz limkomo to balmum? So ani demisiu l'chutz lizmano, va'ato demisiu lebalmum, nira lemidome. Let's see Rabbi say who chutz lizmano is compared to more. Excuse me. Chutz limkomo is compared to more. Im dome l'chutz lizmano. If chutz limkomo more resembles chutz lizmano, then niduneno michutz. Then let's go ahead and what? Let's make it status like chutz lizmano. Im dome lebalmum. And if indeed you think that chutz limkomo is more comparable to balmum, then what? Nidonenu mi balmum. Then let's go ahead and compare it to balmum. So hischil Rabbi Eliezer lodon. So we'll say Rabbi Eliezer begins the darshan. Donin psul machshava mi psul machshava. So we'll say Rabbi Eliezer will say, I'll tell you, my sheet is very clear. We're going to learn out what we call a psul machshava from a psul machshava. Learn out one, what we'll call it, right, cognitive disqualification, or we'll call it one cognitive disqualification or another cognitive disqualification. Or as we'll say, chutz lizmano and chutz limkomo are essentially two disqualifications, we'll say, that are dependent on the cognition of the offerer. They're based on the thoughts of the offerer. So as it says, it makes sense to say that chutz lizmano will be just like chutz limkomo. Just like chutz limkomo, ultimately again, the carbon is invalid, but the loaves are mekudash. So to chutzlim komo, the carbon will be invalid, but the loaves will be mekudash. Ve'in don psul machshava mi psul haguf. But Rabbi Eliezer will say to compare chutzlim komo to balmum doesn't make sense. Why? Because chutzlim komo, Rabbi say, is what? Is a cognitive disqualification. Balmum is what? Balmum is what? An inherent physical disqualification. So it doesn't make sense to compare those two. We'll say pretty strong shaila, or a pretty strong kasha. Hischel Rabbi Yoshua. So we'll say, what did Rabbi Yoshua do with this? Rabbi Yoshua does learn out chutz lim komo from balmum. And Rabbi Yoshua's model, he will say, just like balmum, the carbon is puzzle, and the loaves are not mekudash, so to what? Chutz lim komo, the carbon is puzzle and the loaves are not mekudash. So Rabbi Shua, what do you got? What do you got, Rabbi Yeshua? So Rabbi Shua will say, Rabbi Shua Ladun, Donun psul she'in bal kares, mipsul she'in bal kares. Rabbi Yeshua will say, we will learn out a psul that does not carry with it a penalty of kares, from another psul that doesn't have with it a penalty of kares. Va'al yochiach chutz lizmano she'psul she'yesh bal kares. So we'll say, Rabbi Yeshua would rather learn out chutzlim komo from balmum, neither of which have a psul kares. Masha'enkin chutzlizmano, which ultimately again does carry with it a psul of kares. Va'od, furthermore, nidonenu mishalo lishmo shepasal machshava. Furthermore, again, let's learn it out from Shalol Lishmo Abosai. Again, we're introducing something new over here. Let's learn it out from Shalol Lishmo, a carbon that's offered up Shalol Lishmo, that ultimately, again, is a cognitive disqualification, ve'in bal kares, and does not carry with it a penalty of kares. And I will say, ultimately, v'shasak Rabbi Eliezer. So Rabbi Eliezer was quieted. So apparently, again, Rabbi Eliezer had nothing to reply to Rabbi Yoshua's limud. Rabbi Meir, so we'll say, so again, let's take a step back. So remember how this whole thing started. We have a more fundamental machlokes between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda regarding which is the machlokes case. In Rabbi Meir's model, the machlokes is in Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua, in which case I will say, balmum. In Rabbi Yehuda's model, the machlokes Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua is in what? Chutzlin komo. Let's take a step back. Rabbi Eliezer, Maishna Shachta v'nimtzeis treva davi psulo kodem shchita. So we'll say, let's take a step back. In Rabbi Yehuda's model, I understand why balmum is not a machlokes case. Why not? Because in Rabbi Yehuda's model, balmum is the same thing as treva. Ours both represent inherent disqualifications in the carbon, and therefore, again, anytime you have an inherent disqualification on the carbon, not only is the carbon invalid, but what? The loaves themselves never become mekudash. But the shaila is going to be in Rabbi Meir. For Rabbi Meir, Maishna shachta v'nimtzeis trefa, davi psulo kodem shchita. So why is it in the case where you shechted the carbon and you find it to be a trefa, so we'll say, so the carbon is invalid, the loaves never become kadosh. Why? Because we'll say you have an inherent disqualification of the carbon. In other words, the carbon never even got off the ground. The carbon never got off the ground. So because the carbon never got off the ground, I will say, see, remember again, understand, when you shecht an animal and it turns out to be a chafer, I will say, then what, lemafreya, retroactively, what do you see? It was never a carbon. It was never a carbon. So if it was never a carbon, therefore what? So of course the carbon is invalid, and the loaf designation is also inherently invalid. So therefore the loaves never become kadosh. So I want to say the same thing. Umayshna shachta v'nimtzeis balas mum. So we'll say, so I don't understand. So why is it different than the case of when you shecht the carbon? And it turns out that what? That it's a balas mum. Here Rabbi say in Rabbi Meir's model, the case of balmum is a machlokus between Rabbi Eliezer and the Rabbanon. So I don't understand, why isn't shachta v'nimtzeis balmum halachically the equivalent of what? Shachta v'nimtzeis treifa. It's the same case. It's the same case. Both times you're finding something inherently invalid in the animal, which should prevent what? The carbonic designation from devolving upon the animal, which by extension prevents the loaves from ever becoming kadosh. Yet in Rabbi Meir's model, everyone agrees in the treifa case that the carbon is possible, the loaves never become kadosh, but yet it's a machlokus by the balos mum case. What's the pshat? To which the Gemara says, oh, I'll tell you. So the Gemara says, Bedukin Sheba'ayin Va'aliba de Rabbi Akiva. And we'll say, what are we talking about? When we talk about a balas mum, what are we talking about? We're talking about, we'll say, Bedukin Sheba'ayin. So we often translate, so we'll say, you know where he said, where's the famous story where you see Bedukin Sheba'ayin from? Kamsa bar Kamsa. Right? So we'll say, so there already, Bedukin Sheba'ayin can mean a couple of things. It could either mean a cataract, like a cataract in the eye, or some type of like cut, either in the eye, in the eyelid of the animal. Bedukin Sheba'ayin Va'alibad Rabbi Akiva. We'll say, because Rabbi Akiva say, the Amar im alu lo yerdu. We'll say, if you take a look at Rashi, tap Rashi, Bedukin Sheba'ayin. It's actually right across in the top Rashi from Rabbeinu Gershom. Bedukin Sheba'ayin. So according to Rashi, he says, Dahavi mum over, ve'ino nikar. He says ultimately, you know, we'll say that this is a mum that goes away. It goes away, and it's not recognizable. Okay? It's not recognizable. So it's interesting that Rashi in the Kisvei Yad doesn't bring this down. He doesn't bring down. They say they have mum over, that it's a mum that heals, right? Dahavi pisula kodim shchita. The Sefer Rabbi Kiva the Gemara Mesechus Zvachim im alu lo yerdu. Well, so Rabbi Kiva is of the opinion that with this type of mum that we call this bedukin sheba'ayin, this cataract or this little mum in the eye, so ideally you shouldn't offer it. But what? If you offer it, you don't take it down. It's one of those mumin, I will say, which apparently is such. So you see, in general, when it comes to mumin, I will say, so kind of like mumin is kind of like pregnancy. I know it's not a good comparison, but you understand what I mean. Which is what? Meaning, either pregnant or you're not pregnant, right? In other words, either have a mum or you don't have a mum. I was about to say, so in general, that's how we paskin halacha. Either you have a mum or you don't have a mum. That is true, except there are certain mumin, I will say, which what? Where it's a mum, and ideally if you asked the shaila before you offered it up, what did we tell you? Don't do it. But if it wound up on the mizbeach, then what? We don't take it down. So I'll say, finish that Rashi. Rashi says, Im alu lo yerdu, v'hod lo yerdu, the kiddush koldu, lo chashe psulo kodim shchita, hilcha kiddush lechem. So we're supposed to listen to this. So essentially, the Gemara is suggesting over here is that the machlokes case about a Baal Mum, remember again, this is Rabbi Meir's model, where the Baal Mum case is a machlokes between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua. The machlokes case is in a very specific situation where it's bedukin sheba'ayin. There's a cataract, there's something slight in the eye. Where according to Rabbi Akiva, if you offered up such a carbon, it wouldn't come down. Therefore, again, I will say, because if you were to offer up, it wouldn't come down. So the shaila essentially is, do we treat this like a treifa or not? The fact that halal, so ideally we could say, since it's not supposed to be offered, so therefore again, it's in the treifa family, therefore the lechem does not become kaddish. On the other hand, you can say that's what? Since if it winds up on the mizbeach, you do end up offering it, therefore what? It's not considered to be like a psul shebagufo, and therefore the loaves should become kadosh. That would be the machlokes according to Rabbi Meir. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Yoshua will say, Kim Rabbi Akiva im alu lo yarda bepsula de gufei, aval lekidushe lechem lo. And what Rabbi Yoshua will say, that even Rabbi Akiva who holds that if you offered up the carbon, you don't have to take it down. That's true. The carbon itself could be offered, but what? That doesn't mean that the loaves become kadosh as a result. I will say we're going to see this more in the next Mishnah, or in the Mishnah of days. And I will say sometimes in halacha we differ. See, right now we're assuming that the sanctification of the loaves and the sanctification of the carbon toda are one and the same. If the toda is good, the loaves are kadosh. If the toda is not good, the loaves are not kadosh. We're going to see that there are cases where we actually splice, we actually disassociate the two. So Rabbi Shmuel will say, even Rabbi Akiva who holds that halacha l'maaseh, if you put the carbon on the mizbeach, it works. That's for the carbon. He doesn't necessarily mean that the loaves themselves become kadosh. Itmar. So we'll say another case. Chatos sheshachta chutz lizmano. If you shechted a chatos with the intention to consume it outside of the prescribed time. Im also lo teireit. If you went ahead, I will say, ideally you shouldn't offer up such a carbon, but if you put it on the mizbeach, ultimately again you don't have to take it down. Chutz lim koma. What happens if halacha l'maaseh you shechted the carbon with the intention to consume it outside of the prescribed area? Then what's the halacha? Rava amar teireit. Rava says take it down from the mizbeach, even if it went up. Rabba amar lo teireit. Rabba says don't take it down. So the Gemara wants to say Rava ki Rabbi Yoshua. Ve'Rabba ki Rabbi Eliezer. Shabbos say, let's align Rava and Rabba with Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua by the Balmum, especially in accordance with Rabbi Akiva, like we just said. Rava will say like Rabbi Yoshua, Rabba will say like Rabbi Eliezer. Yet Rabba say we know v'hader be Rabba legabe Rava. So we'll see. You'd have to say that Rabba went ahead and later acquiesced to Rava. After all, why? Midahadr be Rabbi Eliezer legabe Rabbi Yoshua. We'll see. Remember again when we saw the exchange between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua after Rabbi Yoshua advances his argument. What did the Gemara say? Shosig. Rabbi Eliezer didn't say anything. So if Rabbi Eliezer conceded to Rabbi Yoshua, it must be that what? That Rabba ultimately acquiesces to Rava. And others say even though Rabbi Eliezer went ahead and gave in to Rabbi Yoshua, Rabba legabe de Rava lo haderbe. But perhaps again Rabba did not concede to Rava. Why not? Hasam udika amarle nidunenu mishalo lishmo. Because we'll say ultimately it's over there where they said let's learn out the case of Balmum from Shalo lishmo. Aval hacha I dayanas le mishalo lishmo. Im also lotated. But we'll say in this case over here, if you were to learn it out from there, you would arrive at the logical conclusion that what? That if it went up on the Mizbech, indeed you would not take it down. So we'll say all the Gemara has just shown is that the case of Balmum is not necessarily the same thing as the case of a Chatas offered up with the intention of Chutz Lim Komo. The Machlokes would still apply. Shachta Shelo Lishmo. So let's finish off the last case of the Mishnah. So remember again, the Mishnah said, if you shechted it, Shelo Lishmo, what's the halacha? So we'll say, the loaves do not become kadosh. Now we'll say, the Gemara seems to learn this out to fear from the case of El Hamiluim, from the ayil that was offered up during the inauguration of the Mishkan. Says the Gemara, Amra Papa, Shavak Tana Didan El Nazir, the Shchiach, V'nakat El Hamiluim. So we'll say, why would our Tana of our Mishnah leave out the case of El Nazir, which I will say is a much more prevalent and pertinent case, and learn out this halacha from El Miluim, which I will say was what? Was a one-time historical carbon. To which the Gemara answers, V'tana didan ikar milsa nakat. Our Tana, I will say, did what? Our Tana went ahead and learned out this halacha from the source. The source ultimately, again, is the El Miluim, that halacha lamaisa, if offered up shelo lishma, would not be good. Therefore, we learn out to other cases, if offered up shelo lishma, ultimately, again, not only is the carbon not good, but the loaves themselves are not makudash. We will say halacha lamaisa. What do we do with our Mishnah? So let me just quote you from the Rambam. So the Rambam says this is in Hilchot Psuli HaMukdashin, Parak Yud Beis Halacha Yud Ches. Here we go. Shachta v'nifsla b'shchitasa b'machshavas zman or b'machshavas makom kidesh halechem. So we'll say halacha l'maisa number 1. If you shecht a carbon toda with what we'll call it a cognitive deficiency, chutz lizmano or chutz lim komo, if you have in mind to eat the carbon outside of its prescribed time, outside of its prescribed area, obviously the carbon itself is what? The carbon itself is pasul, but the loaves are kadosh. What about a balmum? Nimtseis balmum o treifa. Rambam just gave it away. How did he just give it away? Because he groups the two together. If the carbon is found to be a balmum or a treifa, o sheshachta shelo lishma, or you shechted the carbon ultimately again just not for its own sake, lo kidesh halechem. Both say in all of these cases, the loaves ultimately again are not kadosh. Both say, so what do you see from the Rambam? Anytime the carbon itself was shechted without what we'll call an inherent deficiency, even though the carbon is possible, the loaves will be kadosh. So if you shecht the carbon chutz lizmano, chutz lim komo, right? Then halacha l'maisa, the carbon is invalid, but the loaves are valid. If you shecht the carbon, and there are 3 things happen: either it's a balmum, it's a treifa, or shelo lishma. Rabbi say, what's the common denominator between mum, treifa, shelo lishma? Both say these are all inherent invalidations in the carbon. If the animal's a treifa, it was never fit. If it was a balmum, it's never fit. Shelo lishma, both say is the same thing. It's also what? It's also what? Never fit. In other words, shelo lishma means you didn't offer up this carbon for the sake of a carbon toda. What the Rambam is saying is shelo lishma is the equivalent of shechting a treifa, meaning the animal itself was never designated as a toda, as opposed to what? Chutz lizmano, chutz limkomo, where halacha lemaisa, again, you're shechting it as a toda. There's just some other cognitive disqualification. And halacha lemaisa, whenever there's this inherent disqualification, treifa balmum shalol lishmo, halacha lemaisa, again, the loaves themselves are not mekudash as well. Beautiful. Let's go back there. Only gets better from here. Says the Mishnah, hanasachim. The Nesachim will say wine libations. Wine libations. The Nesachim shekidshu bekli. We'll say if you put wine libations in a utensil, and what happens? V'nimtza zavach pasal. Well, this is an interesting case. I put the Nesachim, the wine libations, into a kli, and then what happens? Turns out that the carbon is pasal. Carbon itself, meaning, remember, Nesachim are brought as an accompaniment to animal carbonos. So it turns out that the animal is pasal. Im yesh zavach acher yakrivu imo. Ve'im lav yifsulu belina. So this is actually interesting halacha. If there's another carbon that I could offer up the Nesachim with, then what? Then I offer up the Nesachim with that other carbon. If not, then what? The Nesachim just simply yifsulu belina rabosai means they just sit and become pasal. They just sit and become possible. We'll see the mechanics now in just a moment. So we'll say, see this interesting halacha? We'll say, this is shocking. This is shocking. Right? I could tell. That's why everybody's just like deathly silent over here. Right? Mamish, you're shocked to your core. Why? Because we'll say in general, when it comes to karbanos, we generally assume that you cannot mix and match. Right? There's no such thing as taking something from here and putting it over here. Yet what does the Mishnah tell me over here? I'm bringing carbon A. And then it turns out that what? The carbon is pasal. I have some wonderful nesachim sitting over here. Fantastic. Just go ahead and bring those nesachim with another carbon. Watch this. Amar Ziri. Ein hanesachim is kachim ela b'shchitas hazevach. So we'll say the halacha is, Ziri says that in general nesachim only become kadosh with the slaughtering of the actual carbon itself. As well say, so designation of the nesachim does not make them nesachim. Nesachim only become the kodesh when the carbon itself is shechted. Says the Gemara, my time, what's the reason? Amakra, zevach unesachim. Because the pasuk says, zevach, the carbon and the nesachim. So from here you see the nesachim only become kadosh once the carbon has been shechted. Tanan, hanesachim shekidshu bekli, even in zevach pasal. Let's analyze this. So our Mishnah, a nesachim that were sanctified in a utensil, and then it turns out that the carbon is pasal. Im yesh zavach acher yakrivu imo. If there's another carbon, let the nesachim be offered up with that second carbon. Ve'im lav, and if not, yifselu belina. Ultimately, again, we just let the nesachim sit, and they become pasal with lina, sitting overnight. So we'll say, what's the case over here? My lav, the ifsel b'shchita. We'll say, are we not dealing with a case where what? Where ultimately, again, the psul in the particular carbon was what, Rabbi say? Was in shchita. And interestingly enough, if you look at Rashi, Ela b'shchita, the kidsho b'kli demasnisin lav dafka. And I will say, maybe when the Mishnah says that the nesachim became kadosh b'kli, they weren't really kadosh b'kli. I will say, because what are we talking about over here? We're actually talking about nesachim that never what? Never actually became kadosh, because the carbon itself was invalidated with the shchita. That's why you can mix and match the nesachim. Why? Because it will say, in essence, what happened? The nesachim really never became kadosh. They never became kadosh. That's why you could go ahead and assign them to another carbon. Lo, the ifsel bezrika. We'll say it's not the case. The case here, we'll say, where the carbon was shechted, the shchita was totally fine. What happened? The carbon became pasal bezrika. After the shechita, something happened where the animal became invalidated by the zrika. To which the Gemara says, and Rashi says, the ifsal b'zrika u'nechasim b'shchita kachil. And therefore we are dealing with a case where the nesachim mamish became kaddish. Kiman kirebi damashnei dvarim hamatirin ma'alin ze below ze. Because most Rebbe's have the opinion that whenever you have two things which are necessary ultimately for any particular process, one of them has the ability to create kedusha without the other. Now look at Rashi for just a moment. Look at Rashi kisveyan on the bottom. Kiman mikacha shchita luchudei. In accordance with whose opinion do nesachim become kadosh on their own? Or it's by, I should say not on their own, but the shchita by itself. Kirebi damar shnei dvarim hamatirin kigon shchita zrika malin ze below ze damar beperak hamishtalech shachat lishman v'zark damar shal lishman halechem kadosh v'eno kadosh. So we'll say our Mishnah must be reflecting the view of Rabbi, thank you, of Rabbi, who holds that even though normally karbanos need shchita and zrika, but yet, again, even one of those processes has the ability to create kedusha for the blood. Or for, in this case, again, for the nesachim. So, right, even though you need shchita and zrika, shchita by itself will be enough to consecrate the nesachim, even though zrika itself never happened. To which the Gemara Safilu Tim Rabbi Elazar Shimon. You could even say no reflects Rabbi Elazar Shimon. Why? Hakam asking, and what's the case here? Kigon shekibel daman bakos v'nishbach. I will say, what's the case? The case is where you did the Kabbalah, you got the blood in the cup, but what happened? It spilled. We'll say Amud Beis. Rabbi Elazar Shimon Savala Kavase Davua. The ultimate thing Rabbi Elazar Shimon holds like his father holds. The Amar Kala Omid Lizro Kizarak Dami. Rabbi say he holds. This is actually fascinating. Kala Zarok Kala Omid Lizro Kizarak means what? Once the blood was received in the kli, then what? Then halacha lemaisa. It's as if the zrika occurred. An incredible approach. Therefore, once you have it in the kli, pretty much you're golden. You've got shchita, it's omed for zrika, it's like it's zarak dami, and therefore, even if it spills before the actual zrika occurs, the nesachim will be kadosh. And therefore, again, Abba say, therefore, the Mishnah says, if there's another carbon that's ready, you could assign those nesachim to another carbon. Amar Mar, im yesh sevach acher yakrivu imo. So we'll say, what did we say? We said that aloch l'mais in this case, where the original carbon that the nesachim were assigned to, that carbon becomes invalid, you could assign the nesachim to another carbon. So the Gemara said, "V'amrav chista." But one second, is that true? V'amrav chista shemen shefri shloshum mincha zeh pasol l'shum mincha acher. So we'll say in general we have a principle that, for example, by a carbon mincha, if you have shemen that was assigned to a particular mincha, and then that mincha became invalid, you cannot assign that shemen to another mincha. Now, we'll say, we feel much more, right? I see everybody's breathing a sigh of relief. I'm back in my carbonic comfort zone over here. This is the way carbonos work. Once you're part of a carbonic team, you can't switch teams. Even if you're part of the losing team, I will say sometimes you lose. Sometimes you lose in life. Sometimes your carbonic team loses, but you go down with the ship. You don't go ahead and suddenly get assigned to another carbonic team. So you see by Shemen, what's halacha by Shemen? If you're assigned to a mincha, your mincha becomes invalid. Sorry, better luck next time. Right? In a different Gilgul, you'll come back. You'll have better mazel. So I'll say you can't be assigned to another mincha. So how can you see over here that if you're nesachim assigned to a carbon, your carbon becomes invalid? Suddenly you could become assigned to another carbon. So Rabbi Yana, yeah, here we can actually. I'll tell you why. Leiv based in masna aleim. Nesachim are different. It actually is amazing. Leiv based in masna aleim means what? Essentially, it's a way of saying that halacha l'maisa. Beis Din made this Tanai. Beis Din, we'll say the Tanai of Beis Din is that for Nesachim, if your carbon becomes invalid, Beis Din stipulated that you could then become reattached to another valid carbon. Now we'll say, where does this come from? This essentially, we'll say, is a form. Tosas already says, we learned this earlier. This is really a form of Hefker Beis Din Hefker. Remember, because Nesachim is the wine has value is money. Beis Din has control of monetary assets of Klal Yisrael. Beis Din essentially made the Tanai that halacha l'maisa, if you are nesachim and your carbon becomes invalid, you could go ahead and reassign those nesachim to another carbon. To which the Gemara says, well, if that's the case, lei Beis Din masna aleim im hitzruchu vim lav yehei lezevach acher. So we'll say the way nesachim are set up is if your nesachim work for the particular carbon that you assign them to, then wonderful. But if the carbon becomes invalid, then what? You have the right to what? To what? To reassign them to a different carbon. If that's the case, so why isn't that true by Shemen? Right, so we'll say, so why did we just say then halacha l'maisa that by Shemen, what did we just say? That halacha l'maisa, if I have Shemen that's part of a mincha, my mincha becomes invalidated, then what's the halacha? The shemen cannot be used. If it's leiv based in masna leim, then what? I should be able to offer up the shemen with another carbon. Mincha, shemen's different. Why? Shemen gufa de minchahu. We'll say shemen is different. We'll say when we say leiv based in masna leim, that's for abosai carbonic accessories. Carbonic accessories can be reassigned to other carbonos. Nesachim is a carbonic accessory. Shemen is part of the mincha itself. When you're part of the carbon itself, your carbon becomes invalidated, you cannot be reassigned to another carbon. If you are a carbonic accessory, then what? you can be reassigned to another carbon. Beautiful. To which the Gemara says, Shemen gufa d'minchu v'listnu alehen d'nifku l'chulin. So why don't you say ultimately again, why don't you make a, so we'll say, instead of just assigning it to another carbon, why don't you go and say that it goes out to chulin? Gezeru sheme yomru motziyim mikli sharis l'chol. Because we'll say that we're a bit concerned. To say that, now we'll say technically Bezin could be master. Bezin could say, if you need it ultimately again for a carbon, then the nesachim are good. If not, they go to chulin. We'll say we're a little concerned about that because halacha l'maisa, then people are going to say that something could be in a kli sharis, and yet after being in a kli sharis, it could go out to chulin. To which they were hashtanami gzeira sheme yomru nesachim shefrish l'shum zevach zeh kshein l'shum zevach acher. So we'll say, so again, why aren't we concerned that people will abuse this situation and just arbitrarily decide to what? Taking the sachim that were part of one carbon and just arbitrarily reassign it to another carbon. In other words, even without a particular need. Hatani Matisya ben Yehuda. So I say, this is amazing, by the way. I don't know who this is, but Matisya ben Yehuda. I'll say, incredible. Again, whoever this Matisya ben Yehuda, what a name. Kigon Shahaya Zevach Zavuach Ba'osa Shah. I will say, listen to this, very, very interesting. When do you have the license to assign nisachim from one carbon that became puzzle to another carbon of osai? That's only when the second carbon is ready to go, is there and ready to go. If there is a second carbon ready to go, literally slaughtered, ready to go at that time, then you could take the nesachim from carbon A, which is now invalid, and assign it to carbon B. But I will say, if there is no second carbon ready to go at that time, then what? My nifsabalina. Then I will say, again, we say that the nesachim cannot be reassigned, and the nesachim simply become pasabalina. If that's the case, adatani seifa la yifsulu balina. So we'll say that why don't you restate the Mishnah? Liflog v'lisnei b'didei. When is this so? We'll say first wide line. Shai says zevach savuach b'osa shah. When can you reassign the nesachim? That's only if after carbon number 1 became invalid, there's carbon number 2 shachted and ready to go. But ultimately, again, if there's no second carbon ready to go, then what? Then once carbon number 1 becomes invalid, then what? We'll say then halacha l'maisa, the nesachim cannot be offered. To which the Gemara says, you're right. Hachanami carbon. This is actually what it means to say. When is this so? You can only reassign the nesachim when there's a second carbon ready to go. But if there is no second carbon ready to go at that moment, ultimately, again, it's as if what? It's as if, so then the nesachim ultimately again become possible, Umi islay Rabbi Yoshua ben Elazar laid begs in Masnelen. I will say this: Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar actually holds that Beis Din is masna, that Beis Din stipulates regarding the wine, the nesachim, that if there's a valid carbon, then fine, but if there's not a valid carbon, it can be associated or it can be linked to something else. V'amar Rav Idi bar Avin, Amar Rav Amr, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Timidin shelo hutzruchu letzibor, l'divrei Reb Shimon ein niftin temimin, l'divrei Chachamim niftin temimin. We'll say ultimately again, Rabbi Yitzchak and Rabbi Yochanan, that if you have a carbon tamid that was originally set aside for the tzibor, and the tzibor no longer needs it, according to Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yosai, they cannot be redeemed while they are unblemished. According to the Chachamim, they can. So you see, Rabbi Shimon, so we'll say if you would leave Beis Din Masnale, and then what? I should say that by definition, any tamid not necessary for the tzibor, ultimately what? Ultimately again goes out to chulin. To which the Gemara says that case is different. Shiny Hasam, the Islu Takanta Biriya. We'll say that case is different. Apparently, what the Gemara is going to suggest to Rabbi Say is you only have to rely on Leiv Beis Din Masna Leim when what? When there is no other remedy. Because in this particular case, halacha l'maisa, you can say that what? There is a way to go ahead and extract the carbon from its sacrificial status, i.e., let it graze until it develops a mum, and then you can go ahead and redeem it. Therefore, we do not rely on Leiv Beis Din Masna. We'll say, let me just tell you the halacha over here. The Rambam writes, same parak. 12th parak, above. Here we go. Nisachim shekitchu b'kli sharis v'nifsal al zebach. We'll say, listen to this. If the nisachim went ahead and the libations were kitchu b'kli, and then the carbon itself becomes invalid, what's the status of the nisachim? Im nifsal b'shchita Lo kitru hanesachel mikarev. So both listen to this. So obviously everyone will agree that if the carbon itself became nifsal b'shchita, then what? Then what? The libations never became mekudash. So because they never became mekudash, then what? They're chulin. Nifsal mekabala ve'elech. But if the shchita was good and the invalidation happens sometime later on, kitchu hanesachim likarev, shin hanesachim miskachim likarev ela b'shchitas hazebach. Umayasem. So we'll say, if the carbon became invalidated after the shchita, then the libations, which were in the klisharis, do become kadosh. But what's the problem? We'll say, you know what the big problem in life? You're right. You're nesachim that are dressed up and nowhere to go. Right? In nesachim, I'm ready to go. I'm in nesachim. I'm ready to go. Problem is, there's no carbon. The carbon is possible. So what do? Listen to the Rambam says, Im haya sham zevach acher zavuach ba'os shah yikravu imo. Just like the Gemara says, if there is another carbon ready to go, literally means slaughtered, ready to go at that moment, you can simply take the nesachim from carbon 1 and go ahead and attach them to carbon 2. Ve'im lav, but if there's no second carbon ready to go, nasu kimishin ifsu balubelina, and ultimately the yisrafu. Ultimately, if there's no other carbon ready to go, then they become pasul belina. But you don't actually have to leave them overnight. They literally become like pasul belina right there, and you could just burn them. When is that true? This is an interesting halacha. Carbon sibor. The Gemara doesn't spell this out, but the Rambam understands this. When is this true, Abosai? That you could assign this sachim from carbon A to carbon B? That's only with communal offerings. Why? Mipnei shalev bezin masna alein. Because always when it comes to communal offerings, Beis Din makes this t'nai that if the nesachim can't be offered with carbon number 1 and carbon number 2 is ready to go, you could offer it up with carbon number 2. Aval with carbon yochid hare elu lo yikravu em zavach acher va'afal pisha zavuach ba'os asha helamanichin at shivsulu belina v'yisrael. So what's amazing? So halacha l'maisa the Rambam paskins. So again, if halacha l'maisa the carbon becomes invalid with shchita, the nesachim are chulin, they never become kadosh. If the carbon becomes invalidated after shchita, so the nesachim already became kadosh. Then what? If there is a second carbon ready to go, you could attach the nesachim to that carbon. If there's no second carbon ready to go, the nesachim essentially become invalidated and are burned. When is this true? Carbon sibor, because in communal offerings, Leiv Bezin Masla and Bezin stipulates that the nesachim could be switched from one carbon to another carbon, but by carbon yachid, Rabbi say there is no such concept like this. By carbon yachid, if the individual's carbon becomes invalidated, the nesachim automatically become invalidated as well and are burned. Mishnah, Vlad Toda Tmurasa. We'll say weiter. Vlad Toda Tmurasa. So we'll say the offspring of a Toda. Tmurasa. We'll say what's Tmura? Tamura means you go ahead and you switch out carbonates. You have a carbon A. You decide, you know what? In exchange, thank you. You decide, I don't want to offer A. I'm going to offer B. What's the halacha? We'll say with Tamura, Vayahu Smura So Kodesh La Hashem. The halacha is there's a penalty. Both the original carbon as well as the exchange carbon both become kadosh. Hefresh, we're going to see all. Hefresh Toda Va'avda. So we'll say what happens if I went ahead and I designated the carbon as a carbon toda. Then what happens? I lose the original animal. Then I separate another animal for the toda. So we'll say in all of these cases, and then what? I find the original animal, right? So in all of these cases, ina tu'una lechem. So we'll say we're going to qualify this more in the Gemara. But interestingly enough, even though the offspring of a toda will have toda sanctity, even though again the tmura of a toda will have Toda sanctity, even though the replacement Toda has Toda sanctity, all of these cases, the additional Toda offerings does not have a loaf obligation. There's not, so it's offered as a Toda, but it does not have its own independent obligation of loaves. Shene Amar, Vikriv al Zebach HaToda. Chazal said, the Pasuk says, you shall offer up with the Zebach HaToda. Right, you shall offer up chalos, matas, belulos, bashemen. What do we learn over here? Hatoda tu'una lechem. But say it is only the original toda which has a loaf obligation for lo vlada, for lo chilufa, for lo timurasa tu'una lechem. Its offspring, its exchange, it's right, its timura. None of those require loaf. So what the Mishnah is introducing me to is something amazing, which is you could have an animal that has toda sanctity, but what does not have a loaf obligation associated with it. Why not? Gzeres, bless you. Gzeres HaKasuv. Says Gemara, Tana Rabbanon. Mahu Omer. Mahu Omer. What is the meaning of the pasuk when the pasuk says Toda Yakriv Imal Toda Yakriv Minayin? So we'll say, from where do we know this? So where do we know? Minayin Lemafish Todasa Va'avda. But say, how do I know that in the case where I separated out that animal as a carbon toda, and then what happens? I lose toda A, the hifresh acheres tachtel. What do I do? So if never you lose your toda, it happens, right? I lost my toda. I separate another toda. We'll call that now toda B. Then what happens? This is where it gets exciting. V'nim says harishona. I find toda A. I've now got A and B. Varishtain homdos. Now so what do? I have two toda offerings. I have A and B. What's the halacha? Minayin she'ezem and she'yirte yakriv. So both say, first of all, how do I know that I have the right to offer either one? I could offer either one of them. Velachma ima, and I offer up the loaves along with it. Talmud lomar hatoda yakriv. Because we'll say, the pasuk says, Hatod Yaakov. So we'll say, what do we learn from Hatod Yaakov? That's a singular, which means what? We'll say, you only have an obligation to what? Offer up one carbon toda. Yachol shetei shnia tu'una lechem. Ahmed, I thought that's what? Maybe the second carbon has a loaf obligation. Talmud lomar yakrivenu. Echad v'lo shnayim. Therefore, we'll say, the pasuk says, yakrivenu. You shall offer it, which tells me what? Only one carbon toda has a loaf obligation and not two. So we'll say, now that the Torah has a riboy and a miyut, minayin the rabos vlodos v'chilufos u'tmuros lakrava. So we'll say, the riboy comes to teach me, that's what? That if the Toda has a child, mazel tov, right? The Toda has offspring, or I exchange the Toda, right? Or temura, right? How do I know that those animals are offered up as a Toda as well? Talmud lomar im al Toda. So we'll say, so the pasuk teaches me that there can be situations where I'm offering up more than one Toda. The offspring of a Toda is a Toda. The temura of a Toda is a Toda. This case where ultimately, again, I exchanged but I lost the Toda, found the Toda, it's a Toda. So we'll say, so I know that I'm offering up as a Toda. The Talmud lomar im al Toda. Yachol yutunos lechem. So I would have thought that maybe halacha lemaisa, I should have to offer up loaves with them as well. Talmud lomar vehikriv al zevach hatoda. Therefore, we'll say the pasuk says singular. You shall offer up loaves al zevach hatoda. Toda tu'una lechem v'lo v'lada v'lo chilufa v'lo timurasa. Therefore, we'll say the pasuk teaches me in the singular that it is only the original Toda which requires a loaf obligation, but not its exchange, not its temura, and not its offspring. That is true only, Rabbi say, when? Only after atonement ultimately again has been achieved. But Rabbi say ultimately again, before kapara, ultimately again, it will require lechem. So we'll say, we'll stop. So if you look at Rashi, Rashi says, "Lefnei kapara tanina tituunin lechem ki the amar minayin lemafish toda midikara mafish acheres tachta mechlal the toda schovahi the katani varishtain omdos is a shirt yakriv v'lachma ima dahinu lefnei kapara." So we'll say ultimately again, it's only after kapara is achieved that it doesn't require lechem, but ultimately again, prior to kapara, lechem will be required. And so we'll say, stop over here. We're going to qualify that last statement in Miras Hashem in tomorrow's daf. Shkoyach.